My parents begged me to forgive my brother for betraying me with my ex-wife, and then demanded I support them and his new family financially. My wife, Amy, 26, cheated on me with my brother, Jake, 26. Thus, I, a 34-year-old guy, just divorced. My family chose them over me, but karma had other intentions. To help you comprehend how my life culminated in this treachery, let me start at the beginning. Jake, born when I was 8 years old, was always the golden child, while I grew up as the forgotten one in suburban Boston. In the eyes of our parents, Robert, 58, and Sarah, 56, I appeared to vanish. They weren't outwardly hostile, but I was clearly viewed as an afterthought. This dynamic became evident as we grew older. I still recall winning my first science fair in 6th grade. I'd spent months developing a working model of solar system dynamics, complete with orbital calculations and revolving planets. I won first prize and received a special citation for mathematical precision. Jake, on the other hand, had t-ball practice, not a game. Therefore, my parents were unable to attend the ceremony. Jake's participation ribbons covered the walls of our living room, while my prize sat untouched on the mantle for a week before being hidden in the basement. Our entire youth was influenced by this preference. Jake's C+ grades were applauded, while my straight A's were treated with distracted nods. My mother was concerned that Jake would feel guilty about his regular classes because I was in the advanced placement program. Jake got a new car for his 16th birthday to help build his confidence, according to his father, whereas I had to start working part-time at 16 to pay for college and buy my own clothes. Graduating high school was another difficult experience. During my valedictorian speech, my parents spent the whole ceremony filming 10-year-old Jake playing in the stands since he was bored. They didn't hear me announce my MIT scholarship. What was supposed to be a celebratory dinner for my successes transformed into a party for Jake because he seemed a little down about all of them. Mom even advised me to tone down my enthusiasm for my college aspirations. When I told her I'd been admitted to MIT on a partial scholarship, she said, "That's great, honey, but have you heard Jake might be the starting pitcher next season?" That's when I knew that nothing I accomplished would ever be adequate. I was simply the practice child, the test subject for their actual parenting efforts with Jake. At the age of 18, I headed out for MIT with my scholarship money, saved from 3 part-time jobs, and a resolution never to look back. When I moved into my dorm, Jake had a summer league game. My folks went early without even helping me unpack. College was a life-changing experience. For the first time, I was evaluated solely on my own merits. I realized my interest in software architecture, studied computer science, and graduated with honors. My college thesis on distributed systems optimization drew a lot of attention, and by the time I finished, I had 5 job offers. A part of me hoped that things would improve with my family, so I chose a good company in Boston, partly to stay close to home. Within 2 years, I was leading my own development team, and by the 5th year, I had become the youngest senior developer in the company's history. However, my parents were too consumed with assisting Jake with his 3rd college major change to comprehend or appreciate what I did for a living. 4 years ago, in a modest coffee shop near my employment, my life changed dramatically. That is where I met Amy. She was finishing her teaching degree while working as a barista. Amy had a talent for remembering each regular's order and a particular tidbit about them. She then told me that she had been leaving encouraging messages on my coffee mugs for weeks before I noticed. She eventually consented to go out with me. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We discussed everything, our families, anxieties, and dreams. When I told stories about my upbringing, she said, "They're blind. They have no idea what they're missing." For the first time, I felt understood. The next year seemed like a dream. We prepared extravagant meals together, discovered Boston's hidden bookstores, and went hiking in New Hampshire. Amy encouraged me to pursue a large promotion at work, helped me prepare for interviews, and celebrated my victory more than anybody else. When I proposed to her after 14 months, she sobbed tears of delight and stated she had been waiting for it. At the time, I thought our wedding was small yet lovely. However, when my family came, they spent the whole reception discussing Jake's new job offer in California. My mother even stopped Amy's father's toast to share a text from Jake regarding his 2nd interview. In retrospect, I should have seen it as a red flag, but Amy laughed it off, describing their commitment to Jake as sweet. For 3 years, our marriage was all I had dreamed for. We started talking about starting a family, acquired a lovely condo in Cambridge, and traveled whenever we could. Amy transformed our house into a warm, loving home by adorning it with images from our journeys and establishing a tiny container garden on our balcony. She frequently stated, "It's us against the world." Then last year, Jake reconnected after failing to flourish in California because the startup culture wasn't his vibe. He moved back to Boston. He wrote me a lengthy email indicating his wish to restore our friendship. He remarked, "Family should stick together," and admitted that he missed having an elder brother in his life. After a week of consideration, Amy convinced me to give him a try. "People evolve," she added. "Maybe they've come to terms with their losses." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Jake for supper. Although the first meeting was unpleasant, it held potential. Jake appeared more self-aware, admitting that he had it easy growing up. He professed a wish to atone for the past. A week later, I introduced Jake to Amy, and they bonded right away, too well, as I would eventually discover. At first, everything seemed perfect. Jake started popping by for dinner a few times a week. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, brought wine, and delighted us with tales of his adventures in California. He also stood up for me when our parents showed their typical partiality at Sunday dinners. I began to hope that we might finally form a genuine brotherly bond. However, things gradually began to alter. Jake began stopping by our house unannounced, often while I was still at work. Amy, who was frequently grading papers, told me they were simply hanging out and that it was wonderful to have company. He stayed for supper, used my coffee mug, and shared inside jokes with my wife. I ignored the warning signs. There's sudden stillness when I entered the room. Amy's phone turned away when I sat next to her, knowing glances at dinner, and coincidental meetups in the coffee shop or grocery store. The pregnancy was announced shortly thereafter. We were enjoying supper at home, naturally with Jake present, when Amy revealed the news. Although I was overjoyed, Jake's reaction should have shown everything. He was not astonished. Rather, he smiled with a knowing delight that made my stomach turn. Jake was never far away from me after that. He discussed how active he intended to be in our child's life, caressed Amy's stomach without asking, and made comments about the baby's future. Even when I planned a romantic baby moon for Amy and me, Jake ended up inviting himself. He stated, "The baby needs both of us," and Amy agreed. I still recall the night I learned the truth. I lay awake, mentally going over months of dubious happenings. Amy's phone was charging on the nightstand while she slept blissfully next to me. In our 6 years together, I had never looked at her phone. I believed in trust and privacy, but that night, I had to know. What I discovered devastated me. Jake and Amy had exchanged hundreds of messages over the previous 6 months. They discussed secret hotel meetings, future plans, and their baby. Soon after Jake re-entered my life, they began sharing a bed. They planned to notify me after the baby was born, figuring I would be too attached to leave. The pregnancy was not an accident. It was part of their strategy. Message by message, my world crumbled. I sat in the reading chair, holding Amy's phone, and read till daybreak. When Amy awoke and saw the phone in my hand, she knew. She wailed, "We did not intend for this to happen. Jake and I just clicked. He knows me better than you ever could." She even used the most overused phrase in the history of affairs. "We were going to inform you, but we didn't want to bother you after I became pregnant." That morning, I called my parents, expecting that they would finally support me. Their response stunned me. My mother responded, "Jake made a mistake, but he'll be a parent now. You have to forgive him and be the bigger person. Think of the baby. Think about the grandchild." They were once again shielding Jake. Certain things never change. That day, I contacted a divorce attorney and went into a hotel. Amy alternated between screaming for my forgiveness and accusing me of deserting our family. At work, Jake tried to corner me, insisting on a man-to-man conversation. I reported him for workplace harassment and had security escort him out. Going through the divorce was a nightmare. Amy and Jake claimed that their affair began due to my emotional unavailability, describing me as controlling and emotionally abusive. My parents supported their story, claiming that I had always been difficult and had a lifelong jealousy of Jake. My mother even criticized the mediator, claiming I should have been more sensitive to Jake's demands. Following that, I stopped negotiating. When we went to court, Amy was able to obtain a fair settlement. Apparently, in Massachusetts, having an affair with your husband's brother does not waive alimony. Small successes, such as retaining the condo and the majority of my salary, seemed hollow in comparison. I am currently 34 years old, divorced, and separated from my family. I changed my email address, blocked their phone numbers, and told building security to never let them in. Some days, I wonder whether I could have prevented everything if I had been a better husband, brother, or son. But finally, I recognized that I was not the one who betrayed everyone. I was not the one who turned the family against itself. It is commonly stated that everyone ultimately suffers karma. I am not sure whether it is true, but I am weary of being the family scapegoat. I'm tired of being supposed to be understanding as others wreck their lives. I've spent my entire life as the one who was overlooked, the second best choice, the afterthought. No more. However, just when I thought things couldn't get much worse, they took another weird turn. Update 1. When I stopped communicating with my family following the divorce, I figured they would finally leave me alone. About a month had passed, and I was focused on recovering and going forward, but it appears that they had different ideas. Yesterday morning, while I was in an important meeting with my development team, our office receptionist notified me that my mother, Sarah, was in the lobby. She insisted on seeing me and allegedly spent over an hour telling anyone who would listen that she just needed to talk to her son. My crew, having watched Jake's previous workplace harassment episode, could tell I was concerned. I ignored her and went on with my work, but soon my phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. It turns out that my mother had asked various family members to contact me. I eventually answered one phone, assuming it was work-related. It was my Aunt Linda, 54, who I hadn't spoken to in years. Without saying a greeting, she began, "Your brother and Amy are really struggling. Jake still hasn't found work, and the settlement funds are running out." She added that Jake's affair with Amy became public knowledge and went throughout his professional network, so no one wanted to hire him. Background checks uncovered the issue, prompting several prospective employers to withdraw their offers. I couldn't help but note the irony. For once, Jake's actions had real consequences. This is where it gets absurd. In addition to buying groceries and paying rent, my parents have been financing Amy's pregnancy medical bills. My father's retirement assets are exhausted, and they are now in a panic as their money runs out. What is their solution? They want me to provide financial support to the woman who deceived me and the brother who destroyed my marriage. My mother did not simply show up at my office. She had a plan. Knowing I wouldn't return their calls, she decided to ambush me at work. After threatening to stay until closing time, she delivered a rehearsed speech about forgiveness and family responsibilities when I finally went down to the lobby to deal with the problem. She conveniently forgot that I had paid for my own college education, stating, "Your father and I have always provided for both our sons. It's time for you to step up and support your brother during this difficult moment." What I was hearing was incredible. Was this a rough patch? My wife got pregnant after having an affair with my brother, who then tried to claim the child as his own. That wasn't a difficult stretch. It was a deliberate set of decisions. When I mentioned this to my mother, she responded, "Well, if you had paid more attention to Amy's needs." I interrupted her, told her to go, and proclaimed in the lobby that I was leaving my brother and his unborn kid behind. While many of my coworkers considered this circumstance humiliating, I wasn't bothered. That evening, Jake sent me an email with instructions on how to bypass my blocks using a new account. He issued half-hearted apologies and thinly veiled appeals for financial aid. He wrote about Amy's pregnancy difficulties, which I was unaware of, and claimed they couldn't afford adequate medical care. He also mentioned that the tension was hurting their unborn kid. The email included a sonogram photograph, which immediately piqued my interest. Their manipulative tactics were clear as they used the baby's emotions to guilt me. The next day, my father arrived at my apartment building, claiming he merely wanted to talk. When the front desk called to alert me, I refused to let him in. For 2 hours, he stood in the lobby, telling anybody who would listen that his successful son was bringing his brother's family pain. Since then, I've had to notify building management of the problem and request that any family members not enter. While it is difficult to address intimate problems in public, I do not see any other option. The harassment has also spread on social media. Amy has been posting vague accusations on Facebook, claiming she was abandoned during her pregnancy by her emotionally unavailable husband. Jake has joined in, adding remarks about how some people need to step up and take responsibility. He's even reposted Amy's accusations, apparently oblivious to the irony of lecturing about responsibility while begging for handouts. It's upsetting how they twisted the story. They paint me as the evil guy because I refuse to support those who misled me. They appear to assume I have a responsibility to help them from their mess just because I am successful professionally. I've started keeping track of everything, including emails, workplace issues, and social media posts. According to my lawyer, this documentation may be critical if they do anything legal. She is particularly concerned that they will try to use the legal system to get more support. What is the worst part? I've been getting messages from family friends and distant relatives telling me to put family first and be the bigger person. They don't seem to grasp that Jake and Amy destroyed what little family I had left. Even though I'm determined not to assist them, the constant pestering is wearing me down. To cope, I've been seeing a therapist and considered relocating to a different location for a fresh start. Despite my hatred for the concept of fleeing, I am fighting to find calm. My own family has gone to a depth I never imagined. They're not just appealing for aid. They're attempting to intimidate and pressure me into donating money to the people who destroyed my life. I have a gut feeling that this isn't over. Desperate people do desperate things, and they are becoming increasingly desperate by the day. Update 2. Suddenly, my former partner's counsel notified me that Jake and Amy were attempting to sue me for further assistance, citing increased medical needs and changed circumstances. My lawyer, who had meticulously documented their harassment, was outraged but prepared. Last week was the scheduled court date. Entering the courtroom felt strange. Amy was dressed to highlight her pregnancy. Our parents sat right behind them with smug looks, and Jake wore our father's old suit. Their lawyer started with an outlandish narrative that nearly made me chuckle. They claimed that the emotional cost of the divorce had been undervalued and that the initial settlement was inadequate. They claimed my pattern of workplace harassment had stopped Jake from obtaining work and even suggested that my alleged vindictive behavior was harming Amy's pregnancy, necessitating specialized treatment due to high-risk issues. My attorney's reaction was devastating. She began by showing surveillance tape from my office building that captured my mother's theatrical antics, Jake's disruptive behavior, and Amy's attempts to sneak in through the back door. She then presented social media evidence, specifically a full timeline of their internet abuse campaign. The genuine revelation came from their bank documents. Jake had turned down several employment offers, dismissing them as beneath him, demonstrating that he was not struggling as a result of my actions. Amy had declined a full-time teaching position to protect her jobless pregnant woman status. The most incriminating evidence was Amy's prenatal records, which proved she was having a perfectly healthy pregnancy with routine expenses. They had used their unborn child as a pawn to acquire sympathy and money. The judge was genuinely angry. When their lawyer attempted to argue that their mental distress required extra assistance, the judge stopped, saying, "Your clients appear to have committed perjury, counselor. Do you really want to follow this line of reasoning?" Following a brief break, their lawyer returned with a gloomy demeanor. Jake was pale, Amy was crying, and their united front had utterly collapsed. I was pleasantly surprised by the judge's ruling. In addition to denying their motion, the judge decreased my alimony payments by 60%. Parties who misuse the legal system are not viewed favorably by this court, stated the judge. Mr. Smith appears to have fallen victim to a well-planned operation to exploit him financially and emotionally. The fallout was fast. Amy decided she could go back to work, while Jake suddenly obtained a retail job. In their final message, my parents blamed me for sabotaging Jake's last chance and promised me that they would never forgive me for abandoning my family. Their attorney quit representing them, citing irreconcilable differences in truthfulness. My workplace tightened security and prevented them from entering the premises. I later found that my parents had taken out a second mortgage to cover their legal fees, and Jake and Amy were regularly battling about money, according to mutual friends. I finally feel like I can breathe. With decreased expenses, I'm building up my money and exploring a job offer in Seattle. Allowing people to confront the consequences of their conduct is typically the most effective form of retaliation. However, I can't remove the sensation that this story isn't finished. Update 3. I want to start by thanking the community. Your support and insights have helped me stay strong throughout this ordeal. This may be the final update to my story. Aunt Linda, my father's sister, unexpectedly contacted me many weeks after the court decision. I was interested in hearing her perspective because she had never been involved in a family conflict. This turned out to be a mistake. Trying to seem worried, she started, "Your father isn't getting any younger. His health is suffering as a result of all this stress." She went on to explain how my parents were on the verge of losing their retirement money and had refinanced their property to cover Jake and Amy's bills. Families should stick together, no matter what, she told me. When I didn't respond with sympathy, she swiftly shifted tactics. Did you know that your mother sobs herself to sleep each night? Even if they behaved poorly when you were a youngster, they are your parents. Jake is still your brother, despite everything that has transpired. Finally, I cut her off. What specifically are you referring to? Jake spent months sleeping with my wife, getting her pregnant, and then trying to claim the child as his own? Is that what you meant? Her reaction astonished me. Well, perhaps you could have been more involved in your marriage, she stated. She went on to blame their affair on me, stating that my alleged childhood jealousy of Jake produced a toxic environment that drove them together. It was so absurd that I laughed, really laughed. Yet another family member was attempting to coerce me into accepting responsibility for Jake and Amy's actions. This time, however, it did not work. I was not moved at all. Linda, I inquired, why don't you help them if you are so concerned about their finances? Your husband's legal firm is prospering, and you have 3 rental homes. Why am I the only one required to support them? She sputtered, unable to respond properly, and stated, that's different. You have a special obligation as Jake's brother. When I questioned Linda why she hadn't intervened earlier but was now choosing sides, I replied, you decided to come to me and demand that I pay for their consequences rather than admit the harm they caused. She then delivered what she thought was her trump card. Your father is considering early retirement due to stress. The home may need to be sold. Is it your desire to see your loved ones lose everything because you are too proud to help? I responded, no, Linda. They are losing everything as a result of their decision to support Jake's conduct. Once again, they, like Jake and Amy, are paying the price for their own actions. And guess what? I am not responsible for resolving that. When you're older and alone, family is all we have in the end, she said, threatening to make me regret my decision. No, I responded. Self-respect is always what we have in the end, and I'm finally choosing to keep mine. With that, I hung up and blocked her number. However, the talk provided an unexpected benefit, clarity. For the first time, I felt completely liberated from the obligations and guilt that had haunted me since infancy. Later that day, I accepted a job offer in Seattle. The relocation feels like the appropriate decision, and the company is offering me a significant boost. I am starting again and selling the condominium. My coworkers organized a farewell celebration for me yesterday. During the most difficult months of my life, these people demonstrated what genuine support looks like. My close colleague sent me a card signed by everyone with the following message. Your value is not defined by those who cannot see it. I've understood that family is based on mutual support, respect, and trust, not blood. Friends who stood by me, coworkers who protected me, and eventually myself have become my genuine family. I am done. To my parents, Jake, Amy, and now Linda, your choices led you to this point, and you are accountable for the consequences. I am no longer available as your ATM or scapegoat. As for me, I'm looking forward to my new life in Seattle. I'm excited about the potential available at my company's renowned West Coast location. More importantly, I can't wait to live a life in which I am valued for who I am rather than compared to someone else's golden child. Writing this final piece from an empty condo, surrounded by stacked boxes, seems weirdly appropriate. Tomorrow, I'll start my drive west. I will reflect on my old life with all of its misery and familiar turmoil, but I will continue to go forward. Yes, their baby was born last week, in case you were wondering. No, I have not contacted anyone or seen any photos. That chapter of my life is over. I'd like to thank this community again for their support during this trip. Your encouragement and suggestions help me overcome my self-doubt. For anyone in a similar circumstance, keep in mind that your worth is more than how your family treats you. Walking away may be the most self-loving thing you do. It is time to go. Here's to new beginnings. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.